Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We are going to go ahead and get started. I will start to doing introductions in just a moment, but first I will pass it along to our host, Felicia Young, to get us going this morning.
Excuse me. Hello to all of our newly admitted Tritons for fall 2023. On behalf of the International Students and Programs Office, also known as ISPO, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be. We are excited to welcome you here to UC San Diego. So again, my name is Felicia Young, and I am one of our advisors, as well as our sponsored student and special programs coordinator. So I joined our office about a year ago and have worked at several different UC campuses. And a fun fact about me is I have actually visited all 9 of our UC campuses, and actually all 10 of them, because I've also been to UC San Francisco. When I'm not in the office, I like exploring San Diego. We have some great places to eat, as well as I live right by the beach. So I try and catch the sunset almost every night if I can. All right, so just a few housekeeping items before we begin today. First, you are on listen only mode, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. Next, we are recording this webinar. It will be posted to the inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu a few days after this webinar takes place. And lastly, please use the Q&A box to get your questions answered. Even if we aren't able to answer them today through the chat or during our Q&A section at the end of the session, there are a variety of ways to connect with ISPO and get those questions answered. So please visit icontact.ucsd.edu to connect with us after today's session. So let's begin. We are happy to welcome you to our session, Know the Rules for J-1 Students. And I'm going to introduce our Assistant Director, Gabi Hoffman, who is with ISPO, and she is going to take it away from here.
Thank you so much, Felicia, and welcome everyone. As Felicia mentioned, we are so excited to have you here, starting your journey at UC San Diego. We know we have J-1 students in various different degree levels and types of programs here at UC San Diego. Many of our J-1 students come here as exchange students. Others are here in graduate programs. So we want to acknowledge all of you and welcome you today. As Felicia said, my name is Gabi Hoffman. I'm the Assistant Director of Student Experience and Engagement here at ISPO. I have been here for about 11 years. Fun fact about me, I was an exchange student as well on the UC Education Abroad program. I studied abroad in the UK for a year. I've also lived abroad in different countries throughout my life. And so I very much understand the adjustment pieces that come with living in a new country and adjusting to a new academic system. So we are here to support you. And again, very excited to welcome you to UC San Diego. So before we get into some of the introduction of the information here, I just want to go through our agenda for today. So today's session is relevant to our students who are here already in the US or those who are planning to enter the US this quarter. We know some of you are still traveling or might be traveling in the next couple of weeks or so. We're going to cover ISPO, the International Students and Programs Office, and your support system here. We are going to do a document self-check for those of you who have already entered the US. Even if you haven't, if you have your DS 2019 documents with you, please pull those out. We'll take a look at them. We are going to go over the rules of maintaining your J-1 status under J-1 regulations, and then we'll go over travel and emergencies. Again, as Felicia mentioned, this is being recorded. We do welcome questions. So if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A function. We will try to answer as many as we can at the end of this presentation. A lot of information will be covered, so hopefully your questions will be answered along the way. So we have 20 friendly advisors, administrative staff, and student assistants who are here and ready to help you during your time at UC San Diego. ISPO can advise you on understanding your immigration status, rules for working on and off campus, traveling, and also how to adjust classes and campus life. Another form of advising that we do, that we like to call it, is programming or hosting engaging global events to help shape the best experience and help understand the available tools and resources for success while studying at UC San Diego. So you can see us all here. We're very excited to welcome you to campus. So ISPO is not the only office on campus who will help you during your program. As many of you might already know, UC San Diego is a very large campus, and there are lots of different support structures here to assist you. So you'll see here, your ISPO advisor, any of us here at the International Students and Programs Office, we will probably play an integral role in your adjustment here in any questions you might have. But if you were a graduate student, for example, you would also be working with your graduate coordinator of your program. If you're an undergraduate student, be sure to familiarize yourself with your college academic advising office. They'll help you navigate making academic progress during your program. You can also rely on your professors in your classes and faculty in your department. And lastly, there are other offices on campus that can help during your program. Sometimes asking just one question that seems simple, for example, how can I find a summer internship, will actually benefit from a support system of various different resources on campus. So you may need to talk to an ISPO advisor to help you understand the employment authorization piece, your college advisor or academic advisor to understand how to enroll in an internship eligible course, and then also the Career Center for tips on searching for internships, writing resumes, and practicing your interview skills. So as you can see in just that example, your support system at UC San Diego is made up of various different units on campus. Take note of different communication methods as well and how to get in touch with us and different units on campus. While ISPO is available through Zoom advising and on a walk-in in-person basis as well, other campus may only be available through virtual advising or by email. So just make sure you're aware of those different contact methods. All right, so now we're going to get into some of the specific rules. And the first piece of maintaining your J-1 status or understanding your J-1 status as well is doing the document self-check. So as I mentioned, if you have your Form DS 2019 with you, if you've already entered the United States, you have your visa page and your passport, your I-94, which I'll go over in a moment. If you have those documents, go ahead and pull them out now so you can do this self-check with us. You can also do this on your own online, excuse me, and I'll give you that resource afterward. But if you have them handy, go ahead and take them out now. If you weren't able to register or attend ISPO's Meet ISPO and understand your immigration documents session, which happened yesterday, make sure you access that recording when available. That will get you an even more in-depth look at your immigration documents. All right, so your immigration documents are extremely important to your DS 2019. You'll use them during your program to apply for work authorization, a driver's license if you're interested in obtaining one here, a bank account, social security number if you're eligible, and other benefits. Never, ever discard or throw away any documents. Keep all copies of your Form DS 2019 from ISPO, as well as any institution you've attended. Some of you might have already attended another institution in the US and have those documents. Always keep them. You never know when you'll need them. If you're applying for a visa in the future, you might be asked to supply those to the visa officer. So just make sure that you always keep those on hand. We'll show you how to maintain each document during your time here. And again, just keep these in a really safe place that's accessible. For example, it's a great idea to take photos of your documents, keep digital copies on your phone in case you lose them. And lastly, every time you prepare for international travel and each time you re-enter the US, remember to do a document self-check, which you're going to do. These detailed steps are outlined at iselfcheck.ucsd.edu. Again, for a thorough guide on understanding your documents and keeping it valid and up to date. But now we're going to go ahead and learn how to do it together. All right, so the first document is your passport. If you have that to hand, go ahead and turn to the page with your photo and biographical information. Your passport should always be valid at least 6 months into the future. If your passport is nearing the expiration date, ensure that you renew it. This process can take some time, so renew it as soon as possible. Your passport can be renewed either inside or outside the United States at your country's embassy or consulate if you're here. If you receive a new passport, there is no need to alert ISPO. Just keep that handy with you, but you don't need to let us know. The next document is your US visa. So this page should be located inside your passport. You can think of your visa like a key. Like a key, you only need a valid visa to enter the United States. However, once you're inside the US, it's okay if you no longer have the key or a valid visa. As long as you are maintaining status, we'll talk about what that means later, you can remain in the US with an expired visa. When reviewing your visa, ensure that your biographical information is correct. Note the number of entries, which lets you know how many times you can enter the US during the validity of your visa. So S means you can only enter the US one time or single time during the validity of your visa, while M means that you can enter the US multiple times during the validity of your visa. Also note the expiration date of your visa and the visa type. This example here shows visa type F1, but in your case, of course, our J-1 students, this should all say J-1. Again, a valid visa is required to seek entry into the US. If your visa expires, it can only be renewed outside the United States at a US consulate or embassy. Unlike a passport from your home country, your US visa cannot be renewed from within the United States. You have to depart the US to renew this if you ever need to. All right, so the next piece of maintaining status is making sure that your Form DS 2019 is always up to date. You are obligated as a J-1 student to keep your DS 29 up to date. Make sure that the program end date, which is an expected program end date, is valid, in addition to the program level, major, and biographical information. If any of this information changes, for example, if you need more time to complete your program, or if your major has changed your program of study, all of that needs to be reported to ISPO so that we can go ahead and make those updates on your DS 2019. Any changes like this must be reported to ISPO through the iPortal within 10 days of that change occurring. Again, just so you're familiar with your DS 2019 document, just note the other fields here on your document so that you know what to look for. The top part of your DS 2019, this is what is going to house all of your biographical information. Again, check that information, make sure it is accurate. If a name is spelled incorrectly or transposed, anything of that nature, that does need to be corrected. So make sure that you review that carefully. It is your responsibility to do so. Your program information is the next box down. So again, ensure that your program category, your subject of study, your program start date are all correct. Your program end date should be in the future, of course, unless you've already graduated. It is an estimated end date for our degree-seeking students. For our exchange students, that date is specific to the date that we were informed you will be completing your exchange program here, so that should all be accurate. However, if you decide to extend your program here and you get approval to do so, or if you need to leave early and shorten your program, that information needs to be updated, and you need to work with ISPO to update that. You'll also see here, there's a mention of the 212E bar. This is not the session where we're going to go into that detail. There are sessions later in the year that we go over that. This is just to let you know if you are subject to the 2-year home residence requirement. More information about that lives on our website, so you can go ahead and search for that if you're interested in finding out more, or meeting with an ISPO advisor if you want to learn more about that. Be sure that you have signed your DS 2019. So we, this year, were given permission to issue all Form DS 2019s electronically by the State Department, which is fantastic. However, you still need to have a physical copy for any visa renewals and for travel. So make sure that you've printed this document when you travel, or if you're going to use it for visa renewal or travel, and make sure you have signed it. That is very important. Make sure that the visa class at the very top is J-1, of course, The ARO, that's one of us, one of our advisors. We are called AROs, or alternate responsible officers. Make sure that we have signed your document. This is going to be your travel signature to enable you to travel in and out of the United States. It will permit entry if you need to make sure that's signed so that they can review and permit entry. So make sure that you are familiar with all these different fields. This lives on our website as well under iselfcheck.ucsd.edu. So if you have any questions or anything looks odd, please contact our office. We'll go over contact information later so we can go over this with you. All right, so the final piece of your document self-check is the I-94. So once you've arrived in the US, and only once you've arrived in the US, you will receive this document. It is your updated electronic Form I-94. This is also known as your arrival departure record. It records that you've entered the United States with Customs and Border Protection. So this is generated, again, online. You will not receive a paper document at the border. This will be generated online, and you can retrieve it within 24 to 48 hours upon arrival by visiting i94.cbp.dhs.gov. So again, this is electronic proof that you've arrived in the US. It is accessible every time you enter the US. And so make sure every time you exit and re-enter, you are accessing this and checking it over. So in order to retrieve your document, you will enter your information from your passport into the portal here at i94.cbp.dhs.gov, and then you can begin reviewing your I-94. So your I-94, please ensure that you check the following items. The first piece is making sure that the class of admission is correct. Again, this says F1, this lives on our website, but you are looking for J-1, make sure it says J-1, and that the admit until date states D/S. What D/S means is that you are admitted for the full duration of your status that is listed on your DS 2019. So from your start date to the end date that's listed on your DS 2019, that is the time frame in which you are admitted into the United States. That's all that DS means. So make sure it says that. Okay, that's really important. Obviously, make sure that your name, your biographical information is correct. Sometimes there are errors made at the port of entry, names are transposed or what have you. So make sure that is correct. If everything looks good, ensure that you save it as a PDF and keep it for your records. Again, each time you enter the US, your I-94 record will be replaced with information from your most recent entry into the United States. That's why it's really important that you look at it every time. If any of this information is incorrect, you're not able to retrieve your I-94 for any reason, please contact ISPO and we can provide tips on how to search for it. And if it's not, you're not able to find it, we can provide resources on how to locate it. All right, so in addition to your immigration documents that we've just reviewed, you'll also need to ensure that you report your most updated address to ISPO. So this is your local address. What you need to do is visit tritonlink.ucsd.edu and click on addresses to update your US address, your address outside the United States, your home address, and also emergency contact information within 10 days of any change. It's really important once you arrive, you know what your address here is here in the US is, to please update that information. That will flow into your J-1 record and be reflected there. So it's really important that that information is current and up to date. And of course, if it changes, if you move at any time, you'll need to repeat this process by going to Triton Link and updating your local address information. All right, so when updating your address, again, note that your current address can be a local US address. If you're here, obviously in the US, if you depart at any time during the quarter, you can also use an address outside the United States. But ideally, this needs to be an address within the United States. There are instructions on Triton Link on how to input your non-US address if absolutely needed, if you're taking a short leave or anything of that nature. But if you are here taking classes physically in the United States, that needs to be a US address. All right, so now that you are familiar with your documents, you'll be required to take action to inform ISPO that you've arrived to campus. So upon arrival to the US, you'll need to generate your electronic Form I-94 reflecting your entry to the United States. You'll also need to update your US address in Triton Link, as I've just reviewed, at tritonlink.ucsd.edu. After that, you'll need to log into iPortal and submit the check-in for I-20/DS 2019 activation request. This is where you'll upload a copy of your Form I-94 that you retrieved. Then you need to make sure that you are enrolled full-time and ready to start your program. You need to be enrolled fully in 12 units no later than October 13th. That is the add drop deadline. For any late arrivals, if you are traveling after Friday, October 13th, you will need to talk to your college or academic department and let us know as well. If you're unable to arrive for the fall term, we will need to work with you on how to adjust your record or go over any sort of adjustments that need to be made for a late arrival. Typically, late arrival after the second week of the quarter, especially at the undergraduate level, is not permitted because you will have missed too much course information. The quarter moves extremely quickly, so students really struggle to catch up if they are not able to make it by the end of week 2. So it's really important to know that and be in communication with us if you feel that you will not arrive by October 13th. All right, so now you are all experts at doing a document self-check. Let's go ahead and go over some of the J-1 regulations in more depth so you know the rules of maintaining your status. So you'll notice here that we use the term maintaining status quite a bit when talking about regulations, but what does it actually mean to maintain your status? What does it mean to hold an active CVIS record, valid J-1 status, or even fall out of status? When ISPO first issued you a Form DS 2019, you held, or you might still hold, what's called initial status. This is before you've entered the United States, but you have gotten your visa with your DS 2019. This means you're ready to start your program on the program start date listed on your document. Once you arrive and submit your check-in request to iPortal, as we just reviewed, ISPO will validate or make active your DS 2019 document. Maintaining status means that you will follow certain rules, regulations, and reporting requirements for the duration of your program. Failure to follow rules and reporting requirements can lead to falling out of status and accruing time in the US without legal standing, which of course is not a good thing. So we'll go over that in a little bit. So the first thing on your DS 2019 as it pertains to maintaining status, you'll notice that instead of your program end date, we list the last date of enrollment or classes. This is because the program end date on your Form DS 2019 is only an expected program end date. Again, this differs a little bit for our exchange students. Those are very specific. We know already when you applied to the program, we were given information to let us know what quarter specifically you were finishing your studies here. So that date is accurate. However, our degree seeking students, particularly our graduate students, who we know, there's not a particular end date sometimes that falls in line with a quarter. It could be a comprehensive exam date or a defense date. We give usually to the end, the last date of enrollment or classes. So this is, again, for our degree seeking students in particular, something to pay attention to. This is only an expected program end date. For all of our students, if you finish earlier, sometimes you finish your degree requirements earlier, or in the case of our exchange students, global exchange and EAP, sometimes you need to return home earlier unexpectedly, or what have you. If you finish earlier, your program will be completed and we will automatically shorten the end date on your DS 2019 to reflect that. However, if you need more time, right, you have academic requirements you need to fulfill, or you've gotten permission to stay another quarter, you will be required to submit a request in iPortal to us for us to extend your program end date before that end date comes. We really cannot do very much at all once that program end date comes and you are looking into falling out of status. So please, please make sure you pay close attention to that program end date on your DS 2019. From your true program end date, which again can be the last date of your final quarter, or for grad students, a comprehensive exam or defense date, you continue to maintain your status, but you will be entering into what is called your grace period. The grace period allows J-1 students to remain in the US for up to 30 days after your program end date to make plans to depart the United States. For those of you who want to stay in the US beyond your 30-day grace period, so perhaps you want to pursue further study at another degree level, or you want to work and apply for work authorization, you must make these plans and request the appropriate transfer or work authorization before the end date listed on your DS 2019. Again, I want to stress this a lot because we see it from our students sometimes who realize their program end date has passed and they have not applied for benefits to work or to transfer to another school or to extend their program. And it's vital that you do so. So please pay attention to that date if you want to stay beyond the end of your program. So you continue to maintain active status if you take action, again, to continue studying in the US or working before your grace period begins. Again, for example, if you're admitted to a higher degree level in another school, after completing your program here, you may continue staying in the US so long as you have arranged for that transfer of your J-1 record before the end date on your DS 2019 with us. If you transfer to a new school to start graduate studies, for example, within the next 5 months, what will happen is you'll return to initial status at that new school and start this process again. However, if you decide to depart the US or do not take any action before the end of your grace period, your CBIS record will auto-complete and your J-1 status will come to an end. A question we get frequently, particularly from our exchange students, is, can I travel in my 30-day grace period? Yes, if you have no intention of staying beyond 30 days, right? You're preparing to go back home, but you want to see some of the United States, absolutely. This is the time to travel, see the beauty of the United States, see things outside of California. Just know that you cannot travel internationally and re-enter in J-1 status if you leave the borders. So if you go to Mexico, if you go to Canada during your grace period, your J-1 status ends at that point and you cannot re-enter in J-1 status. So just be aware of those pieces. And we can advise on travel during your grace period and other options in advising. So if you want to discuss that as you get closer to the end of your program, we can absolutely provide those resources. All right. So moving along then to maintaining status in more depth here. So again, just to kind of reframe this and look at this kind of holistically, maintaining status means that you will follow certain rules, regulations, and reporting requirements that we talked about for the entirety of your program. So let's look at some of those rules in a little bit more depth now. They include enrolling full-time, updating your DS 2019 when any information changes, as we talked about, maintaining academic standing and integrity, following federal rules and regulations, and obtaining work authorization. These are the main 5 that we are looking for in terms of maintaining status. So the first one, full-time enrollment. You should plan to enroll and remain enrolled in a minimum of 12 units each academic quarter at UC San Diego. Summer is not required as this is considered a vacation term. So fall, winter, and spring quarters, however, you should be planning on being enrolled in a minimum of 12 units. There are exceptions to taking less than 12 units. Prior to dropping to less than 12 units, though, you must apply for permission to do so. And this is through what is called reduced course load from ISPO. You can apply for this through the iPortal. If you are an EAP exchange student and applying for an academic or medical reduced course load, please check in with both your home university as well as the UC EAP system-wide office before submitting a request, as this may impact your long-term study plan. They'll need to be aware. The same goes for our global exchange students. Please make sure that you check first with your home university if you plan to drop any courses for these reasons. All right, so J-1 students are also obligated to keep their Form DS 2019 current. We went over this in detail, so I'm not going to go over all of it again. But again, just make sure you're checking that program end date, that it is valid. If any biographical information or program information changes, or if you are taking a leave of absence, withdrawing, transferring, any of these changes need to be reported to us within 10 days via the iPortal. The third piece of maintaining status is academic standing and integrity. So academic integrity violations have a serious impact on your non-immigrant status in the United States. Those who are subject to these violations must transfer out of UC San Diego or depart the United States within 15 days. If you are given any kind of sanctions that don't allow you to enroll in the following quarter. So just keep this in mind. This really doesn't give students, obviously, a lot of time and can be extremely stressful. So make sure that you are educating yourself, you're learning about excelling with integrity by visiting the Academic Integrity Office at aio.ucsd.edu. It's really important. We know the differences can be quite significant here in the United States in terms of citations and writing and so forth. Review those course syllabi that you get at the beginning of every quarter. Understand what is expected of you, right? When you're collaborating or you're working with classmates and conducting research. To make sure that you understand those expectations. And the AIO office is a wonderful resource. You can check with them if you have any questions or doubts about citations or collaborations and how to note that in your research, in your writing. Again, those who are subject to suspensions due to an academic integrity violation, if one is found, can face 1 quarter to 1 full academic year of a suspension, depending on the severity. So, of course, this can cause status issues because your maintenance of status is dependent on enrolling, as we just covered. So make sure that you are aware of these. And if you have any questions, again, talk to Academic Integrity or come to ISPO to talk to one of us. All right, now, of course, is following federal rules and regulations. So rules here in the US may be different from your home country. In the US, there are both state laws as well as federal laws. Federal laws apply to all 50 states in the United States, while state laws only apply to that particular state. So let's take the medicinal marijuana as an example, right? Although this is legal in the state of California to purchase medicinal marijuana and partake in recreational use of marijuana, it is not legal in all 50 states, right? So be very aware of this. International students are subject to federal laws, though in this particular case, this is legal in California. Students who possess marijuana may face trouble with federal officials if caught with it or if there are any issues that arise with it. So please be mindful that all international students in non-immigrant status and J-1 are subject to federal laws. And the fifth piece of maintaining your status is work authorization. This I cannot stress enough for our J-1 students because the rules for J-1 students are different than from F-1 students. And a lot of times our J-1 students, because they have friends who are in F-1 status, think that the rules of F-1 status apply to them. They do not. So please pay attention when I talk about work authorization, when we discuss this and send out information throughout the year. We know that our students want to make the most of their experience here, absolutely, and you'll be looking forward to getting that work experience either on or off campus. And I really hope that you've all registered for our J-1 Working in the US session that is happening on Thursday, where we will go over work authorization in depth. But just know that J-1 students, any kind of paid employment, whether it is on or off campus, must be authorized by ISPO before you begin working, okay? This is again different from our J1, our F1 students, excuse me. So make sure that you are aware of this and please attend our session on this tomorrow. Just a note for those of you who might already have a social security number, if you have one already, you can use this paired with proper work authorization once you have that work authorization. But just having a social security number alone does not give you work authorization in the United States. This is still considered unauthorized employment if you don't have permission from us to begin work. So again, just if you have one, that is wonderful. It's a big hurdle that you don't have to go through in applying for one here, but it does not give you work authorization automatically. So keep that in mind. So again, to avoid any serious problems with unauthorized employment, before you start working, find out what kind of work authorization you need. You can visit iwork.ucsd.edu to explore the different types of employment availability to you during and after your program as a J1 student. All right, and finally here, I just want to wrap up with some travel and emergency contact information. This is important. Hopefully this will never be an issue for you, but it's important for you to just have on hand in case there are issues or emergencies that arrive. This is our International Student and Scholar Emergency Contacts card. This can be downloaded at icontact.ucsd.edu under Emergency Contact. I would definitely recommend downloading it, keeping it as a digital copy on your phone. It contains important phone numbers as well as tips on what to do if you're ever held at the border by U.S. Customs Immigration Enforcement, or run into any kind of issues with the police, for example. This is a really good card to have. So again, icontact.ucsd.edu has this card available and other contact methods to get in touch with us as well. All right, so I'm going to pause here for a moment. I know some questions are coming through, which is fantastic. We are going to allow for time to go through the different questions that have come up. If you haven't thought of questions now, now is the time. I'm going to go through a few more slides just to wrap up and go over our upcoming programs so that you are all aware. But I will leave some time at the end to answer these questions. So get those going and start putting them in the Q&A if you have not done so already. Okay, so just moving into our orientation activities, we have a ton planned for our students coming up in the next week in particular. We are excited to have you arrive on campus, connect with other students. The first event, I should say, or activity we have are meetups that are hosted by UC San Diego students for other students. These are interest groups. So if you are interested in, sports, or if you're interested in outdoors and hiking, there are interest groups of all different types that are available, run by our students here who work with ISPO. So if you're interested in joining those, connecting with other students, please go ahead and join our meetups. This is available on our iOrientation site where you signed up for orientation to begin with. So iorientation.ucsd.com/meetup. Also, an additional iOrientation events. We want to feature some of the big ones coming up on Saturday. This Saturday, the 16th, for those of you who are already here. And then on Saturday, the 23rd, we have our UC San Diego bus tour, which will explore the greater San Diego area and your new home for the next few years. The International Fan Fest, Student Fan Fest rather, is coming up as well. This is our collaboration with athletics where you can enjoy free pizza, play fun games, win prizes in our raffle, and mingle with international scholar athletes and learn about volleyball from the UCSD women's volleyball team and coaches who will be playing that evening. And then finally, we have our mixer, our international mixer, happening on September 27th. This is one of our largest signature events. This is a great time to come out and meet other international students and mix and mingle over in the Great Hall here on campus. We also have every day, starting on Monday, September 18th to Friday, September 22nd, our global coffee hours in the morning. We also have our lunch and learns in the afternoon. So global coffee hours, these will take place in our ISPO Eucalyptus Grove from 10:30 to 11:30, where you can come on over for a cup of coffee and a morning pastry, meet your fellow international students and staff, and participate in fun activities. Our lunch and learns feature different topics every day, from intercultural communication to social justice 101, and lunch is provided as well. Both of these events are Get CCR eligible. If you didn't attend yesterday's session on the ISPO, we went over the Get CCR. If you're interested in learning more, head over to ievents.ucsd.edu, and you can also check out the Get CCR information on our website as well. Okay, so now for our socials. On Monday, September 18th, we'll have our social for international graduates. And on the 18th, on the 20th as well, we will have our International Peer Coach Open House for undergraduate students. Then on Wednesday, September 27th, we'll have our Gap Mixer for those who participated in the Global Ambassador Program. So for those of you who want to keep connected and want to know what's happening at UC San Diego all year long, we have our iEvents calendar. This is a live calendar that features globally engaged events hosted by student orgs and campus departments throughout the year. Head to ievents.ucsd.edu for the latest information. And if you haven't seen already on our Instagram, we are raffling off some Amazon gift cards and ISPO swag as part of our Instagram giveaway. So to enter, first you'll need to follow us on Instagram. Then you'll need to like the post, and then finally take a picture at iOrientation and either share it as an Instagram post or an Instagram story. Just make sure to tag ispo.ucsd so that we can reshare all the fun. It can be a picture from you attending one of our workshops or our social events. This is a great way to mingle with others, obviously, and get those photos up there, but also enter our raffle. So the giveaway ends September 24th. So go ahead and do that as soon as possible. Best of luck. All right, so I'm going to leave this screen up for a moment. Please take a moment to scan the QR code on this screen. So this is going to take you to a survey for the session. We'd love to hear your feedback so we can continually improve these sessions and better serve you. So while you're filling this out and grabbing this information, a few final reminders. Once you arrive to the US, again, please make sure you submit your check-in form via the iPortal. And also, please continue to register for other orientation sessions by visiting iorientationucsd.com. Those are still open and available for those that haven't reached capacity yet for you to come and join. And lastly, you can always contact ISPO at icontact.ucsd.edu and follow us on social media. Just again, as a reminder, this webinar has been recorded. It will be uploaded within the next few days at inewstudentwebinars.ucsd.edu. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. So we can go ahead and get started. To my fellow panelists, do we have any questions here that we should begin to answer out loud?
Yes, so we do have a question from a student asking about the distinction between their programs, excuse me, their program start and end dates on their DS 2019, as opposed to the issue date and expiration date on their visa, which are different dates. Did you want to explain a little bit more about those differences?
Sure. So the program's start and end date on your DS 2019, those are going to be the dates that are going to determine your status in the United States. They shouldn't be all that different from your visa. That is, the start date on your DS 2019 should match what is on your visa. As well as the end date. We can take a look at that in advising, but just know in general, your DS 2019 is what you should be referring to, those start and end dates, in terms of when you are allowed to arrive and when you must depart or make changes to your program. That is the document that holds more weight than your visa. But if anything looks amiss, if Sometimes a visa end date will be a little bit shorter than the program end date. That's okay. As I mentioned earlier, if your visa stamp expires while you're in the United States, that doesn't have any impact on your status. It's your DS 2019 that needs to have valid dates for your maintaining status in the United States. But if you have any questions, please come to advising so we can go over that with you. All right, any other questions? I know several of them have been answered by my colleagues, which is fantastic.
Okay, so there's another question about traveling abroad while on a J-1 visa. So just to clarify, when on your visa, it should say M in terms of multiple entries allowed rather than S, which is a single one-time entry into the United States. So as long as your visa says M, which it should, students are able to depart the US and seek entry back into the US while their visa is valid, and as well as bringing your passport with you and having a valid DS 2019 that's up to date. So students are allowed to travel, let's say, to Canada or Mexico during their time with us. And as they seek entry back into the US while from abroad, they would need to show all of their correct travel documents, which again include a passport with the expiry date at least 6 months into the future of the date that you're entering the US, as well as an up-to-date DS 2019, and your visa must also be valid and say for multiple entries, which again is what students should have typically when they're studying in the US.
Yes, that's exactly right. Thank you, Felicia. And just to add on to that, because there might be some confusion, when I was discussing travel outside the United States and your visa status ending, that is only during your grace period, right? So from the end date listed on your DS 2019 up to 30 days after, that is your grace period. If you travel outside the United States during those latter 30 days after your program end date, you cannot re-enter, that your J-1 status ends at that point. You cannot re-enter in J-1 status. But as long as you're within the bounds of your program dates, your start and end date, and again, have all those valid documents that Felicia mentioned, you are totally fine to travel internationally from any country back to the United States, as long as you have that multiple entries notation on your visa.
All right, well, I don't see any more questions in the Q&A for us. So I'm glad we were able to answer everyone's questions. I know that Karina and Kyle have dropped some links into the chat for everyone with regards to how you can visit us during Zoom advising. All of our hours of advising are posted on our website as well, along with guidance on how to log into our virtual or Zoom advising, and also information about traveling internationally and then seeking entry back into the US to return for your studies here. So we would like to thank all of you for attending today's session. Again, whether you are joining us from inside the United States or from the other side of the world, on behalf of the International Students and Programs Office here at UC San Diego, we hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, evening, or morning. Have a great fall quarter, and we will see you at our next session. Thank you, everyone.